Hello and welcome to the Data for Subscriptions podcast. I'm your host, Behdad Banian, and I have the pleasure of welcoming Thomas Walker here to the show. Welcome, Tom.
Oh, thank you very much, Behdad.
Tom, you are one of our most experienced customer solutions consultants, and today we're going to focus on one of my favorite industries. I'm fascinated by it, the finance industry. And the reason I'm fascinated by it is because of all the industries that we see going through these transitions, transformation that we speak about from a data management perspective, this industry really pushes the envelope because it's one of the most important institutions and organizations for society and businesses to work. And at the same time, it's absolutely at the forefront of pushing the envelope from digital currency, cryptocurrency. It really pushes what we speak about from a software as a service and data management to the absolute max.
Absolutely. And a lot of the financial institutions have been around hundreds of years, and in some ways they're still doing a lot of the same stuff they did. They're just doing a whole lot more. There's many different ways in which kind of the digital life has affected it, and like I say, a lot of the digital transformation that's happened. So there's a lot of very traditional things that they do, but there's also a lot of things where they're pushing the boundaries, like I say, cryptocurrencies, crowdfunding, blockchain, a whole lot of different ways in which they're involved in new and different things, even if they are, a name that's been around for a long, long time.
So if you expand on what trends you see in this space, and specifically if we can hone in on software as a service adoption and specifically data management, what is it that you observe?
So what I've seen, and there's other companies out there which have done surveys, to support this, but there's a lot of SaaS adoption for a lot of different kinds of reporting. Risk management and identification, things such as analysis and analytics and machine learning, looking at performance management, and using a lot of their measurements against things that they set up that way. But also one thing, I was reading a report by Forbes Insights, and they talked about 83% of executives say that improving data management is going to help them as a company to service their customers, to increase the bottom line. So that intersection of hey, wow, we want to increase our data management or adopting SaaS, where those two meet, is where there's a lot of opportunity and a lot of, investment and activity going on in the industry right now.
It's a fragmented industry. It goes from the types of companies that you said that have been here for hundreds of years, possibly, some of the traditional banks, all the way to the companies that are dealing with, for example, cryptocurrencies and digital currencies. How big of a factor is M&A activity?
Right, and it's interesting calling it a fragmented industry. Like I say, it's fragmented because there's a lot of startups, there's a lot of disruptors out there. And what often happens is, you'll get one of these, disrupting type of companies that eventually gets bought by some of the old traditional ones. So that kind of merging of the old and the new, we saw it back with, online trading a couple decades ago, online bank accounts, in that same kind of time frame. And the same thing is happening now, where you have companies that essentially make a market, then they get swallowed up by somebody else to bolster their types of products and services. And sometimes it's products and services. Sometimes these more upstarts, they're taking more traditional banking services and bringing new audiences. There's still a large unbanked and underbanked population out there, which can be brought in. Everything from Walmart offering checking accounts. To other ones doing it online for people who have traditionally not been in the banking sector. So like I say, there's a lot of M&A around kind of the consolidation to get, hey, wow, we want to have a financial institution that has every possible service out there for every kind of people out there. So as they're kind of pushing the envelope, some of these companies eventually being brought in with some of the larger ones so that they can contribute to, like I said, that larger overall ecosystem for the banking sector.
All right, let's look at a customer you've recently worked with where we've seen these opportunities and challenges in play, Tom.
Sure. So one company that I've been working with recently, they have a financial reporting SaaS portfolio that they have. What happens is they have very, very complex customers. Some of them are banks and financial institutions. Some are just large enterprise with global operations. What this company does is they bring all of their assets together in one place so that they can do reporting and analytics on that. And the problems that they were seeing was they wanted to use pricing as a way to gain more customers, gain more perceived value from their customers. And they've been doing this for quite a long time. And in reality, they have a whole huge mix of technology, people, processes that they've developed to handle this. And it just made sense that, okay, well, let's take a step back. Hey, let's see if we can make this more streamlined, make it less time consuming, use less resources to bring customers on and to run the monthly billing processes that they have.
Okay. So what was the initial specific ask from them to you to kind of, this is what we need to solve for?
So what they had said is, like I said, they had this whole huge mess of systems. Like some of them were 15 years old or so. Some of them didn't even have documentation. They weren't sure what they did, but they knew they couldn't stop it. So they had all these operational problems. They bring in a new customer, and now everything takes longer. So they couldn't get billing out in time. There was a lot of effort involved in actually doing the billing. Hey, running reports, feeding them through Excel, feeding them to the billing system. It took time to set up new customers. So they really wanted to be able to take those resources, redeploy them, into other revenue generating positions in the company. But right now they were just required to, essentially get all this information into billing correctly.
Yeah. And if I put that in light of what you just said in terms of what they wanted to achieve, which is to kind of serve their customers better, provide them better value, grow the revenue, and also being more efficient in terms of how they manage their revenue data and billing.
Yep.
It sounds to me like that starting point, they realized themselves that that's not really serving them to meet their goals, which is not always the case with customers that we meet. How come these guys had the insight to kind of take a step back and go, hold on a minute, this is actually not the right way to do this?
Well, what had happened was, and really they do look like a lot of our customers. They just had the realization, I should say a lot of customers when we first start working on them, they just had the realization of, wow, every month, they're getting more and more calls at 2 a.m. that something failed. They were getting more, the length of time it took for them to repair the monthly billing cycle went from 12 hours to 24 hours to 48 hours. It was increasing. They had some new customers coming on, which were rather large, which they weren't sure how that would affect it. So it was just this kind of snowball going downhill building. And they were just realizing that, okay, this is no longer sustainable. They had looked for a solution a couple of years ago. They had bought a new billing system, which they thought could handle all this stuff. And when they realized, hey, well, this effort failed, they had to go back out and look for, okay, well, we not only have to look at billing, but this, usage mediation, this usage processing process as well.
This is interesting. How come they started by solving for this by going for a new billing system? And was that because they thought that the billing system naturally would manage the whole data flow and the data management issue that they had underlying?
That's what they thought. They thought, and some of the billing vendor that they went with, I think it was 2.5 years ago, said that, oh yeah, we can do this piece as well. So it's more, taking, this massive information, boiling it down to what they need for billing. Like I said, the billing provider that they ended up buying said that they could do it. And in the end, they not only didn't do it, but they didn't do a whole lot of other stuff as well. So some of it was overpromising on the billing side, so that when they went out this time to look for a solution, they were looking for not only billing, but someone to handle, like I said, the usage management piece that we're being brought in to handle.
Right. Seems like a somewhat of a painful journey for them, but on the other hand, something that taught them something that we are seeing a whole lot of other companies not yet realizing. We're still seeing that they're trying to kind of solve for this issue with the wrong means, be it a billing system or you're throwing more people into the mix. Can you be a bit more specific on the improvements that you just went through with us?
Absolutely. So they had several resources, technical resources that were constantly working on this problem, with new customers, handling different volumes and things like that. And they're able to essentially take those and redeploy them on revenue generating activities. Like I said, there's no IT group in the land that doesn't have a huge list of mission critical projects out there. So they were able to redeploy them on there. Also from an operations perspective, they were having problems with, billing cycles taking longer and longer. Hey, with our SaaS solution, things dynamically scale. So we're always going to be handling that. Hey, they could get a new customer that's now 20% of their business. they don't have to worry about, wow, do I need more of this, more of that? We just dynamically scale and handle it. So their operations are going to be much simplified as well. And again, now they're going to have more resources to handle, other types of applications that need that support.
So in summary, from a business initiative standpoint, the automation and the software that we provide manages for their current business needs as well as they scale and grow. And at the same time, we're basically reducing their full-time employee cost, if we say so, to manage for this. Now they can choose to put it, for example, on revenue generating and customer related activities per se.
Oh, absolutely. They have a long list of projects, which they're just waiting for the resources. So now they're able to, to push that to the, the top project on that list that they had.
Got it. How big of an issue is revenue leakage and revenue assurance in this case?
Funny with revenue leakage, revenue assurance, everyone knows they have some.
Yeah.
Usually there's somebody that says, okay, well, in this case, we can't bill that. But then when we actually get into it and get under the covers, often we're finding that there's a lot more than they expected, or sometimes they think, hey, it's between these two systems, we think something's off. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes there's other bigger problems. In this case, revenue assurance or revenue leakage, it was a small problem. As we go through, with the deployments, as we're in the early stages now, we're expecting to find more. But there's certainly been some holes that have been plugged on there, as well as from a customer satisfaction point of view, making sure that invoices are right. Because anytime you're writing a check, you want to make sure you're writing a check for the right amount. And like I say, with revenue assurance, we've certainly found that there's some issues there, but we're expecting to find more as time goes on. As well as one of their fears were the larger new customers we have, the more complex, the more likelihood that could happen, so that they are in effect putting controls in place to prevent that in the future.
Right. And it's interesting with revenue leakage. We've had this on previous episodes as well, as one of those, you don't know what you don't know. Now, in this case, you say that so the customer knew at least a few indicators of where issues could reside. But initially, when you spin up the software from our side, and so initially you do an assessment and you it's almost like a checking for symptoms and issues, and you start to see holes and you plug that. The interesting takeaway is that if I go back to what you said, what their ask was to you, revenue leakage and revenue assurance wasn't necessarily on the list, but this is an added bonus really of what they get. Oh,
absolutely. Absolutely. And like I said, usually they're going to have some suspicion there might be some out there. Yeah. But when we're, auditing and saying, well, we got, 14 billion records, we want to make sure 14 billion records, either show up on an invoice or in whatever summarized fashion, or that they're all accounted for. So, just the way we make sure that everything comes in has to go out. Sometimes it's wow, what about these 100 million? We never did anything with them. So you say it's often peeling the onion type of idea of, hey, looking for it. We find something, find out what has to be done to make sure that that's going to be, chargeable, or that's going to be revenue going forward.
You might be asking how important it is that the data is auditable and traceable.
Oh, it's absolutely paramount. Like I said, especially when you're talking about a SaaS environment, so things are going to be going from whatever infrastructure they have. So that could be another SaaS environment. It could be their own systems. But to make sure that we can say, hey, this was the number of files, this was the number of records that came in. Often we're going to have different points throughout the process that says, okay, well, this is what happened to them. But it's absolutely critical, and often surprised as to, with the way that the customers have slowly developed and evolved things over time, the different handoffs that they have, how hard existing customers have it with their current infrastructure, how hard it is to give that trail. So, essentially having us as the, in the middle say, okay, well, we know this is how much comes in. We know this is how much comes out. It's a very critical thing because, otherwise it's just, you don't really have any idea. So, sometimes customers know what they don't know. And that's often a great place to start. But the real problem is when the customers don't know what they don't know, because then you have to figure out, okay, well, there's all these different places things could happen. Essentially put audit points throughout, but it's absolutely critical to be able to do those, counts of records, volumes, dollars, whatever kind of units that they are charging for.
Tom, when we speak about data management and specifically usage data management, there are alternatives in the market that claim that they can do the same. What is it that DigitalRoute does that makes us the best alternative? Why did the customer that you talked about today choose us versus others?
Well, like you say, there's no shortage of tools which say they can do what we do. You have places like ETL tools, you have iPaaS tools, you have systems integrators. Let me address them all slightly differently. ETL tools and iPaaS. Okay, there are certain things that they could do. If something is very simple, hey, this works, you just got to load some data, there's not a lot of processing, there's probably a place where they could do what customers need. But when you want to do things like validations, hey, I only want to send data for a customer to billing when they're set up correctly in billing. Hey, we can do the checks for that. With a customer we were talking about, every customer of theirs had different ways in which stuff had to be sent to billing because they had customer-specific definitions for what the billing process for them was. So, if you got a record, for customer A, we have to do something for customer A, B, and C. Those other tools simply can't do it. If you're talking systems integrators, well, if you have enough time, you have enough money, they can certainly come up to do things that we have. But even after that time and money, are you really going to be ready for the change that happens next month, next quarter, next year? Because they're often going to do exactly what they're supposed to do. But businesses, they're constantly changing, they're constantly ebbing and flowing over time. Well, once they succeed long-term do. So then you have to go back and say, well, now we have to change this to handle something different. So that kind of custom-built solution, by itself, it is very hard to justify in the long term because, when you go through and you make changes, often it's going to take you just as long and just as much money for some simple changes as it did to stand it up in the first place.
Tom, you recently also worked on a use case by the name of Wealth Canyon to basically capture all of the know-how and experience that we have. Why don't you tell us what Wealth Canyon is as a company to begin with?
Sure. So Wealth Canyon is a institutional investment accounting and reporting software as a service company. They service investment banks, brokerage houses, large multinational companies, fund managers. So a lot of different types of institutions. And they provide a reporting platform to do risk management, regulatory management reporting, financial analysis, financial analytics, on top of all of the different assets that companies have essentially spread throughout the world.
Right. And what are the issues they're trying to solve for?
So a lot of the issues they're trying to solve for are they have a lot of in-house developed processes, procedures, systems that they require to do, well, a lot of different things, including billing, including customer interaction. But they've really kind of grown this variety of different tools that they have for their operations. So it's one of those at the time, it made complete sense to say, well, I'm going to do this, then we have to fix it this way. But taking a step back, they're really looking to streamline their operations, both for customer onboarding, customer billing, and customer billing ties very heavily into customer satisfaction.
Right. And if you look at post-implementation of an automated software for usage data management, what kind of benefits do you see?
So first off, understanding the information better. Quite often when you're doing this type of thing, it's like, hey, we got to get billing done. We got to get billing right, which obviously is very important, not only for the customers, but for the company itself. But then they don't often see what are other avenues in which we could take this information and we could use it. So instead of saying, hey, we have to get these numbers to get it to billing, well, hey, we want to take the data, take it, maybe a different view of it. Hey, we want to look at, assets in Bulgaria across all of our customers. We want to look at government securities, across Europe. By bringing that information, not just to get billing right, but to get it so it's their ability as a company to kind of slice it and dice it and report across all of their different customers. That is some of the other things that they're looking to do. Additionally, Wealth Canyon wants to do more things, right? They have all of this information. Well, they want to, both by themselves and through partners, they want to be able to offer services for managing and advising customers for this. Because they may say, hey, wow, you have this one customer with $1 trillion in assets. Well, they really want some more help in, hey, there's the most risky part of this, say it's $100 million. Wealth Canyon wants to be able to, provide advisory services on that, and just charge for that chunk of it that they want to do that there.
Right.
So not just to say, hey, our overall kind of investment number with, this particular bank is so big, but the piece where they want more from us or from a partner, that they could grow that way, they want to be able to offer these additional services. So they need help getting, essentially their, the back end processes in order so they can do these things.
So from a customer side, better service, flexibility, and more value. On the back end side, specificity, granularity.
Absolutely. And just streamlined,
Right.
so that they don't have to have, so many people, so many processes in place, things taking a certain amount of time. They want to essentially compress that. So a lot of the stuff that are the current headaches, they don't even have to think about anymore.
Got it. All right, Tom, if I take it back to where we started the discussion today around where the finance industry is and where it's come from, if you look ahead the next 2 to 3 years, what do you expect is going to happen?
So like I say, we've seen a lot of changes in the industry just with all of these external shocks. As you see mergers and acquisitions in financial services, you're going to see the same type of thing in fintech as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of companies where, hey, they might have made sense a couple of years ago. They got some great technology, not the same marketplace. They're ripe for being acquired, for merging with someone else. So I do believe there's going to be a lot of different, type of M&A activity on the fintech sector, particularly in the SaaS world, because it's much more easy to take things and combine them in that type of environment. One other statistic I had thrown out before is the number of executives that are looking to improve data management so they can service their customers better, so they can make more money themselves. That is certainly going to play into the fintech sector, because that's what the financial services industry is looking for. So, like I say, taking those trends of consolidation, of data management, there's a lot of areas in fintech where they're going to be looking for solutions to provide their customers, in those types of areas.
Got it. Tom, thank you so much for the conversation, and thank you everybody for tuning in for today.
All right. Thanks for that.